Good evening, everybody. This is Dr. Joseph Baker from the Limerick Chiropractic Center, and we're going to be talking tonight a little bit about driving me crazy, your driving posture. Now, I'm not sure if you've ever been driving down the road and you saw one of those low riders and you saw those guys just all eased back in the car, and you're wondering how in the world could they possibly see over their steering wheel to figure out what's going on down the road. Well, let me tell you, posture does matter, and it does matter for driving your car. And I don't care whether you're in a lowrider or the little old lady that can't see over the dash of her car. Our posture matters, and it matters to each and every one of us, because in the end, either we're building our body up or we're breaking our body down. Now, in the next few minutes, we're going to talk a little bit about the posture that you're supposed to have in order to set yourself up for success. And before we get any farther in the conversation, listen, I just want to remind you of making sure that you're commenting on this video, you're liking it, you're also sharing with your friends and family. To me, the main goal of us supplying this educational information is to stop you from doing the bad things that make your spinal function worse, and help with every time you do this to build your body into a stronger, more stable position. And this information, whether it's for a chiropractic patient or it's one of your friends or family members, it's going to apply. And in fact, when we look at this, do you have good driving posture? That's a question you want to ask yourself. Because to start this conversation, it's what you believe to be true. See, some of us live in this world of denial. Some of us live in this world where we think, hey, I am good. And we don't even recognize how bad we are. There's times when I tell patients, the best thing that you can do is have somebody else take a picture of you. Take a picture of yourself in your setup. Because in the moment, whether you're driving around and you're in the car for 10 minutes, or whether you're driving for an hour and a half going back and forth from one place to the next, like I said, either that posture of yours is building your body up or it's breaking you down. And we want to make sure that anytime our patients do something, it's constantly uplifting the body to that higher level of function, not causing the subluxations or the spinal degeneration that they have to continue to worsen with time. In fact, I was just talking to one of our younger patients who just got her driving permit, and my conversation with her was, yeah, you should be watching this video tonight, because I recognize that if she's never starting a bad habit with her setup for her driving, that means that she never has to correct that bad habit in time. And like anything, listen, if we start out down the right road, it's so much easier to continue down that path than to have to circle around and correct something that we've been doing for months, years, or decades of time. So let's dig into this just a little bit, because your posture behind the wheel matters just as important as your posture behind the computer screen. Your body doesn't care. It just knows that if you're using your body, this spine of yours, like a piece of equipment, either you're setting yourself up for success or you're setting yourself up for more damage. See, in the end, our body doesn't do excuses. It doesn't care about how busy you are or how long you have to do this, whether you have to answer to somebody else or you're self-employed. All it knows is that either you're building yourself up or you're breaking yourself down. And in turn, this is a great pictorial of some of the things that you need to have an overview of just to capture in your mind's eye. We have the right and then we have the wrong. Now, for each of you, if you have somebody take a picture of you when you're in your car from the side, you might see one of these pictures. Too intense, too serious, too close to the steering wheel, hunched over like a turtle. Maybe that's you. Or maybe you're like the low rider the guy that's in the car with his arm all the way outstretched, you're leaning as far back as you could possibly get and still sitting over the steering wheel. Maybe that's you. Well, let me tell you, either one of those scenarios is not okay. In fact, I can only sit here for a minute. That feels awful. I recognize that, you know what? In a proper setup, not only are we capable of doing this and walking away, not creating more subluxations or creating more stress in our spine, but we get to do it for a much longer period of time. And I love the fact that when we do things properly, we get to do them longer because of it. Now, the one thing that you do have to address, and I want to make sure that we touch base on this right away, is your headrest. Of all the things that you could take control of all the things that you're capable of helping yourself with, your headrest needs to be the very first thing. You want to take that bad boy, you just want to yank it straight up as high as it can go. Most of you, I'm just simply going to tell you, that's probably where it needs to be positioned. Now, for some of you that are really vertically challenged, okay, maybe it needs to be a little bit lower. But for most of us that are 5'8", 5'9" plus, well, let me tell you, that headrest really needs to come up as high as possible. Not only is it going to help protect you during accidents, to reduce the amount of injury that your neck is going to have to absorb, but on top of it, it's a great biofeedback mechanism. It's a great point by which you're capable of making sure that you're resetting your posture so that you stay in the right position. It happens to be a true win-win situation by raising that up into that position. Now, you're going to see here those two, the reason why. When it's too low, what ends up happening is that the head is going to actually launch up and over top of that headrest. During a whiplash injury, not only do you go back into the seat, but the tendency is that it raises your body up, which means now all of a sudden you whip over top of that headrest, which means it acts as a fulcrum to make the whiplash injury even worse. Now, the reason why we see this is because, well, we don't want a lot of distance between our head and the headrest. We want them close together because that's going to stop that back and forth that is going to create some of that injury. But on top of it, it gives you that point of reference. We have a condition. It's called forward head carry. Maybe some of you have heard about it. You know, they also call it tech neck, where people start, instead of their head being up over their shoulders where it's supposed to be, they start drifting it forward more and more and more, to the point where this 12 to 14 pound bowling ball that we call a head is jutting out straight in front of our chest and not over top of our shoulders where it's supposed to be. So by having the headrest in the right place, it allows us to push it back against the headrest to make sure that we're not rounding our shoulders, to make sure that we're not compressing our lungs, to make sure that we're not training our body into a bad position. Now, if your arms and legs are too rigid also, that's a problem. Yeah, our arms are not supposed to be straight out while we're driving. There's supposed to be a bend in our arms. God's given us this thing like halfway between our wrist and our shoulder. It's called an elbow. It's designed to bend. That's how we get food to our mouth, all right? And what it does is it allows for us to relax the muscles. Relax the muscles in the forearm, the shoulders, all the way up into the neck. Maybe you're one of those individuals that you're used to having your arms out straight. You're used to grabbing a hold of that steering wheel. Well, let me tell you, sooner rather than later, these muscles are going to fatigue and you're going to get sore and achy. And, well, that's not the way this experience is supposed to be. By having that slight bit of relaxation in your elbows, it's going to allow the rest of the tissues in your arms, into your chest and your upper back to relax and settle more so. Now, this, again, being that example, yeah, we don't want ourselves hunching too far forward. We also don't want our arms out straight or our legs out straight because, again, it requires us to curve this low back of ours, all right? Either one of these positions, when I look at this, I look at it and the only thing I can see is a turtle. That turtle posture, that curvature, it's a horrible posture. There are so many classes that we've taught on how this affects not only your neck, but also your respiratory system. All the muscles in the arms, creating things like carpal tunnel type symptoms, besides the tendinitis in the elbows and in the shoulders, because of the position that this is putting you in. There are massive amounts of problems that come from assuming this turtle-like position here. But when we maintain these normal curves, and let's remember, we're supposed to have 3 curves in our spine. The neck, the mid-back, and this low back of ours are supposed to all have curvatures. That's why we see this little gap here between the back of the seat and the low back there. There's supposed to be a curvature there. In fact, we need to maintain that while we're sitting. So in turn, we want to make sure that we're in that right position. Now, one of the hazards of being too close to the steering wheel is the fact that if you're in an accident, you're going to be eating the airbag, okay? And let me tell you, if you've never had the experience of having an airbag go off in front of you, in that split second, it is going to pound your face. It is going to pound into your chest. It is not going to be a good feeling. And the likelihood is it's going to produce more damage to you than is intended because you're way too close to it. So, by making sure that you're moving back, this airbag is not going to come up and into your chin and into your face. It's actually going to expand out fully prior to you getting to it, and just like a pillow or a cushion, absorbing the force of your body landing into it. Sadly, when you're this close, well, it's opening up and you're coming at it at the same moment, so you are going to absorb a lot more force from the airbag going off in that moment. Now, the legs too, yeah, we want to make sure those legs are bent too. We need to make sure that they're bent just a little bit. I love this recliner position. I mean, this is wonderful, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, that looks like a Barca lounger. That's the only thing I can think of. Nice lounge chair position, isn't it? In fact, you take away the steering wheel, that's exactly what it looks like. Looks like she's on a lounge chair. People drive around like this all the time. They recline way back farther than they're supposed to. Their arms and their legs have to be stretched all the way out. Not only does this create poor posture, but your response time in the case of an accident goes down tremendously because of the posture and the position that you're in. The low back, like I had referred to, it needs to be supported. Now, for many of you, the low back cushion in your car is not the right size. It's not big enough. You're supposed to have a 40 to 60 degree curve in that low back of yours. And many of you, as we look at the curve in your spine, we recognize, well, listen, if you're sitting, well, the normal curvature is not being maintained. The normal curvature is being lost, which means there's more stress that's being put on not just the muscles around the low back, but also into the sacroiliac joints and into that fifth lumbar disc, which is why so often people get things like sciatic type pain, low back pain, where they get out of the car and it takes them 2, 3, 4 steps in order to be able to stand up properly. They get out and they're holding their back and they're slowly arching it to try and be able to stand up again. Well, that's because that proper curve, that proper arch isn't being maintained. The muscles do exactly what they're supposed to do. They work really, really hard to support the body, and unfortunately, that working really hard means that they get fatigued more quickly than they're supposed to. So, question is, what does good posture look like? Now that we've heard a little bit about the bad, let's take a look at some of those good things. So the base of your seat is supposed to be reclined at about a 100-degree angle. That means it's not supposed to be sticking straight up in the air. It's supposed to be reclined back just off about 10 degrees off that center line. The base of your neck and your back should always be touching the seat. We teach a very simple 3-step process of sitting. And yes, I know that we don't have the opportunity right now, but to demonstrate getting into the car, yes, you should always back into the seat. All right, back into the car first. You slide your butt all the way back to the back of the seat, and then you go ahead and put your shoulders against the back of the seat. You sit, you slide, and then you move back. Same thing, just like if you're sitting in a school desk. Sit, slide, and back. The seat should always be flat. It shouldn't be tilted. It shouldn't be pitched down. It should be nice and level. The hips should be at least at the same level as your knees, which is why oftentimes you can tell if you're sitting too far away from the steering wheel because your knees are well below the level of your hips. Finally, you're seated high enough so that you can see clearly over the steering wheel. Now, the mirrors and dashboard, you should be able to see those without leaning forward. In fact, one of the great things that I've learned from AAA classes is that your mirrors should be set up so that you can see your side view mirrors, your rear view mirror should be in position when your head is in that nice neutral position resting against your headrest, where you should only have to move your eyes from side to side in order to be able to see down the side of your car, out the back of your car, with just moving your eyes and not your head. That was a tip that I've learned through the AAA driving school. Now, steering wheels should be at chest height, all right? Super important because we want to make sure that our arms are at a nice, restful, comfortable level, not too high, not too low. The knees and the arms should always be slightly bent. We talked about that. That relaxed position is going to keep fatigue from setting in. And finally, 2 finger gaps between the back of your knees and your seat. This is something that might be a little bit more advanced for some, but it's going to be certainly helpful to make sure that you're in the proper resting position. The headrest should be comfortably against the back of your head without leaning forward. So when we see this diagram, one of the great things is this number diagram tells us the steps by which to follow in order to make sure that we're getting our setup proper. Number 1, raise the seat height. Number 2, adjust the back. Number 3, we want to move the seat forward so that we make sure that our knees are level with the hips. Number 4, bring the headrest up. Number 5, we want to make sure that the tilt in the seat is nice and neutral. And then number 6, adjust the steering wheel. By following this very simple diagram and system, we're capable of making sure that we're getting ourselves into that best possible position because, listen, just like standing and sitting postures, good driving posture is super important to maintaining a healthy spinal function. I don't care what the activity is. We want to make sure that we engage it in a way that allows us the opportunity to be able to participate without producing new subluxations or aggravating the conditions that we presently have. I love the fact that we could take just a few minutes tonight and talk about driving me crazy. I'm looking forward to hearing from you guys. Hearing from you guys in regards to what your biggest takeaway from this conversation was tonight. Maybe it's the headrest position, maybe it was the setup. For each of us, we're a little bit different. For some of it, it's based upon the habits and behaviors that we already have put into play and some of the things that we recognize that we need to be changing. So, I'm going to encourage you, number 1, leave me a comment. Let me know what your big takeaway was from this conversation tonight. Number 2, make sure that you're liking this video. And then number 3, share this with your Facebook family. Make sure that others know how to help themselves and protect themselves from future damages. I'm Dr. Joseph Baker from the Limber Chiropractic Center.